Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Public Safety Committee for Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. Welcome, everybody. And first item is whether we have anybody who would like to make public comment. I don't see anybody in the room. Is there anybody online?
We do have Zach Wynn. He's coming in now.
Okay.
May I speak?
Yes, Zach, welcome, and go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Zach Wynn. I live downtown. And I'd like to say I appreciated the comments condemning political violence made at last week's meeting of the legislature. The fact is, political violence has been normalized in Ithaca for many years now. I specifically cite the attack on the GOP office on Route 13 in late 2020, where peaceful Republicans were attacked by an organized leftist mob. The highway was shut down, with material stolen from the Republicans assembled there, burned in the street. Law enforcement did nothing to manage the situation, arriving and leaving while being taunted by the violent crowd. An elderly woman had her shoulder dislocated. About a week later, the same mob of individuals laid siege to the Ithaca Police Department, triggering a series of arrests. For my investigation into the incident, all charges were later dismissed. This same faction of individuals has continued to engage in criminal roadblocks since that time under various pretenses as recently as February of this year. I have raised this issue in the past, and I appreciated Legislator John expressing disapproval of these shutdowns of traffic, which are both illegal and dangerous. With the conflict in Gaza following the October 7th attack still a hot-button issue, the election approaching, and the recent release of body cam video of the death of Sonia Massey at the hands of a police officer, a return of civil unrest and roadblocks to the streets of Ithaca is just a matter of time. Additionally, with the attempted assassination of President Trump still fresh in people's minds, and the return of the student body less than a month away, I request an unequivocal rejection of political violence from members of the Public Safety Committee and a specific condemnation of the tactic of unpermitted roadblocks, which have no place in civilized society and amount to hostage-taking and kidnapping. I also specifically request that Legislator Pillar, who has participated in at least one of the unpermitted roadblocks I am taking issue with, please use her influence within the Ithaca Democratic Socialists and Ithaca Tenants Union to discourage further exercises of unpermitted shutdowns of the roads. Your position of leadership and authority in these activist groups could potentially serve to discourage these dangerous and illegal actions that are not legitimate forms of protest. Please do what you can to discourage them from occurring. I would be very thankful if you were to do so and refrain from engaging in any future roadblocks yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the committee? Okay. Moving on, I don't believe there are any changes to the agenda other than the Dewar report was submitted a little bit late, so it's not in your packet. It's online, so we'll look at it there. And then we have minutes approval from June 25th, 2024. Could I get a motion? Lee moves. Shauna seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Chair's report. I did have one item I was hoping to talk about, which I'd spoken with the sheriff earlier. In connection with the GIVE grant, we have funds available to distribute license plate reading cameras that can be activated in the event of a shooting or at other times in emergencies. And the data collection can be used for law enforcement. There's lots of protections around use of that information. But it would certainly be a public safety enhancement in our community. Unfortunately, placement of the cameras would be optimal on NYSEG poles. And NYSEG has a policy regarding use of their poles where they would look for a 10-year lease. And unfortunately, the GIVE grant is year on year. We're not in a position to enter into a 10-year lease. And frankly, from a public safety standpoint, this seems like something where NYSEG should be participating and helping make a safe community. I asked the sheriff whether it might make sense to draft a letter, either from me as chair or the Public Safety Committee as a group, to NYSEG, requesting them to consider some exception to their policy in this instance. And I thought we could have a short discussion on that. Derek, did I get that right? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, Rich, thank you for saying that. A lot of the locations are on thoroughfares that NYSEG has setback requirements and poles. So obviously any assistance we can get with getting around that 10-year contract. And there is also a fee associated with that. I can't recall what it is offhand, but it's not extremely cheap. Any help we can get would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, Mike, did you have a comment?
Was he commenting on how much NYSEG was charging us?
Well, both that it's a 10-year term and the cost.
Okay. I mean, how much are we looking at from NYSEG? I mean, this would almost be something, can we talk them into doing it pro bono, or if we just use the poll? Because then it doesn't matter how long the lease would be. I mean, 10 years, 20 years, if we're paying zero, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, how much? I think it was not a nominal amount. Sheriff?
Yeah, I can't recall, like I said, what the exact cost was offhand, unless Jen remembers it. Some of it is associated too with whether or not we use a solar panel or not. It's easier to tie into a NYSEG pole and use electricity from the pole. If not, we're reduced to using a flock pole, which is just like a fiberglass pole. I think it's about 15 feet tall, if I recall, and using a solar panel.
I think that's something we could explore, whether they do it on a pro bono basis. I think we could propose that. And with the committee's permission, I would draft a letter for us to review at our August meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because how many polls are we talking about? How many cameras?
I think in the neighborhood of 30 to 35, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
I mean, that seems pretty nickel and dimey for NYSEG to, not that they're not allowed to be that way, but. Right.
Well, I think this is an instance of they have a policy. So that was their first response. And hopefully if we talk to them, they may reconsider. But Lisa, you had something.
So the county has a government liaison with NYSEG, and I was wondering if the sheriff's office has reached out and talked to them yet. I'd be happy to initiate a discussion if that would be helpful in this, but I don't want to duplicate if that's already taken place.
Well, that might be the right pathway. Derek?
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware of that, Lisa. I knew the city of Ithaca has an agreement in place, and we did have some communication with a person with the city, but nothing came to fruition as a result.
Maybe that's the first step, Lisa. If you could introduce the sheriff to the liaison, we'll see if we could get a different response from that direction.
Sure, we can start that.
It just strikes me, this is something where NYSEG, I would think, would want to be helpful. But,
Agreed.
okay. That was Chair's report. County Administration, welcome.
Thank you. The only update we have, and I'm going to hand it over to Bridget, in this year's budget, the governor had provided additional enforcement powers, cannabis enforcement powers to cities, counties, municipalities, and there was a conference call back in June, which Bridget and several other county representatives attended, and I wanted her to provide an update about that.
Yes, please.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. So yes, many of us attended that webinar, and then subsequently we pulled together county attorney, a representative from our environmental health division at Whole Health, district attorney, and then a representative from the sheriff's office to talk through what adopting a local law allowing the county to enforce the illegal sale of cannabis would mean to us locally and what resources that would entail. First, I thought it would be helpful to provide a brief update of which I learned from the group and how the current enforcement is working. So any complaint related to the sale of illegal cannabis here in our county is directed by both the Environmental Health Division, the Sheriff's Office, as well as the partners at the city. They're directing all of those reports directly to the Office of Cannabis Management. And from there, very little information is passed down from the Office of Cannabis Management on what action was taken, what the result of that action was. Neither the DA, Environmental Health, or the Sheriff's Office is notified of when an inspection or enforcement action is taken in the county. As far as we know, it's not a criminal charge, but the DA is not kept updated on any civil proceedings either. To us at the county and our partners, there has been no noticeable follow through in terms of closing shops, et cetera. So that's sort of where we're at now. It was noted by Tompkins County Environmental Health Division that currently they are not doing all inspections of vaping shops for illegal sales of vaping products to minors for safety concerns. That is something that the state has allowed them to do if there is a present safety concern. So that ties into this discussion because very often vaping shops or places where you can buy vaping products are possibly engaging in the sale of illegal cannabis. So that was something that was brought up by our staff, our team at Environmental Health. When we discussed the adoption of local law, expanding our local authority to enforce in this area, it was heard loud and clear from the team that it would really be best to focus on the sale of cannabis to minors only. That's really the biggest concern right now, and a concern that we've heard from some of our community partners already. That would require an investigation with a controlled purchase, so actually engaging in sort of the controlled purchase process. And there would be a requirement for some additional resources to make sure that we are effective in this area. That would include additional staff and staffing hours from Environmental Health, additional staff and staffing hours for the district attorney's office. The law would require hearings in city or county court within 3 days of any emergency padlocking, and a court decision within 4 days. So that just sort of gives you the time frame in which we would be required to operate. And because of the significant safety concerns involved in this type of enforcement, there would be an additional need for support from the sheriff's office. It was stressed by our team in Environmental Health that they would really be asking for a deputy to accompany any enforcement done by their team as a safety precaution. And then, of course, we would need additional capacity for investigative purposes. It was noted by the lieutenant on the call that currently illicit cannabis sales are sort of a low priority when we're talking about the sale of illegal narcotics in this county. So that is the sort of summary of where we're at and what additional resources would be needed. And essentially our process would need to parallel the process of the Office of Cannabis Management. So we would need to be working very closely with that office to make sure that we're in communication and that we're getting the information that we need from the New York State office and that we're providing them the information that we're learning here locally. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. I see Matt is also online and could answer any questions, as well as the sheriff.
Okay, I have a couple questions from committee members, but let me first go to Matt. Do you have anything to add to that report?
I don't think I have anything to add. I think that's the resources are probably the biggest challenge, in the sense that law enforcement has a difficult enough time focusing resources on gun-involved violence and fentanyl and other narcotics, as well as violent crimes, domestic crimes, things of that nature. That that's places cannabis. It's hard to place cannabis enforcement above those things. That being said, sale to minors is something that we're all concerned about and would be a priority to focus on in this context.
Okay. Mike?
I have like 4 questions. Who does like tobacco and alcohol right now? Like, we don't do that, do we?
Environmental Health. Yeah, Environmental Health. Mm-hmm.
So when they do those, we don't send a deputy for that.
Correct.
So I guess what would be the justification of sending a deputy for cannabis?
Because of what I've learned from Environmental Health is what they have seen and witnessed in other counties when the enforcement has taken place. There have been instances in which guns and other weapons have been on premise in those shops.
Which brings me to my other question. It's my understanding that you have to have a license to sell marijuana. And there's only, well, now there's 3 in the county. 3 in the county. I mean, why would we even run? Why don't we just shut down the others? If they are now giving us the authority, which I don't know if we did not have before, if they are expecting us to do the enforcement now, why wouldn't we just go and shut those down?
Shut down the legally licensed ones?
Well, the ones without a license. If you don't have a license, you're selling weed. Why aren't we just going to those stores and confiscating everything? And
That's what this local law would allow us to do, if we adopted the local law.
okay, why do we need a local law then?
Because then that would give us the authority to enforce the law.
My understanding is New York State is saying if you pass a local law, you can do this
That's right.
broadly on a local level.
I guess I just don't understand. If we have state police, why aren't the state police doing this? If this is, it just seems like a pass down to us to make us responsible for something that the state is supposed to be responsible for.
Yeah.
Can I toss in almost the same question, which is, yeah, why is it that we don't have the authority to do that now, if we do have the authority to regulate alcohol and tobacco sales?
It's different. It's different law. And to your point, Mike, it was sort of editorialized in our discussion that it does seem like the Office of Cannabis Management is not equipped or have enough resources to currently enforce all of the illegal sales in the state. So they are, in fact, authorizing local municipalities to do that work, some of that work on their behalf.
Okay, Shauna.
Yeah, over a year ago, we were actually having this exact same issue, and this was before any of the dispensaries had opened. There were these little shops that were opening up all over the city, and we had a conversation with the assistant general attorney in Binghamton, and she actually had us provide a list of these rogue vendors. They went on site, they issued them warnings, and then they shut down the locations. And I think many of them stayed closed for a few months. Then we started getting the dispensaries that were legal, that had licensure. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the places that are rogue, for one, we don't know what type of product they're selling. There's no markings, there's no identification. They could be getting it from anywhere. It's not safe. And the reality is that they're not abiding by the law. We're also not collecting taxes for that. The places that are doing it legally, the dispensaries here in town that are licensed, we're collecting taxes, and there's serious oversight for the growers, for the people that are doing the traveling with the cannabis, and then for the shops themselves. Everything has to be labeled, you know what you're buying, and it's ideally safe. And so, I mean, I agree with Mike Sigler, like, we should not be sympathetic to these, you know, rogue places that are selling, you know, cannabis to underage minors. They have no rules. They're not collecting taxes. You know, I also question the tax revenue that we are bringing in from the legit dispensaries that are doing the right thing. Why can't we use that money for enforcement?
Shauna, if I can jump in, I agree with what you said there. And the structure set up in New York State, and I think it was long past time that we considered legalization. It was a fait accompli in any event, but it was set up with a focus on it being an agricultural product grown here, processed here, and the licensing for growers and processors is all in place. And the illegal sellers are largely bringing it in from out of state, particularly, I think, the California and the Pacific Northwest. If you're testing it, a lot of it has fentanyl mixed in with it. It's really dangerous, or it can be. And yeah, I want the tax money. I want the tax money, and I want to run this the way the deal was made. Yeah. So I am firmly in favor of us looking at a local law. I would like the local law to be drafted more broadly than just underage use, even if that was our focus at the beginning. I'd like to have the ability to go beyond just looking at that. But I'd sure like us to have the tools in the toolbox to make this market work the way everybody agreed it was going to work. Anybody else? Lee, it looks like you look pensive.
Well, I'm just thinking through different things. Is there an estimate number of illegal operations? Did I miss that?
I don't have that information. I don't know if Matt has any sense of that. No.
Okay. In the way the laws are structured at the state level, Are there limited criminal penalties on these operations? Is it mostly civil in the enforcement realm?
Yes,
Civil.
yes.
So it's going to be tough to enforce to begin with, but you got to put some teeth into it somewhere.
Mike?
I'd like to hear from the sheriff. I mean, do we have the bandwidth to do that? I mean, is that something we should take on, or should we leave it to the state police to do that? Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're going to probably get much help from the state police in my estimation. You know, when this came down, we were all sold a bill of goods that the Office of Cannabis Management was going to handle this stuff. The sheriff's office is certainly not looking for more work. We're busy enough as it is. However, I don't imagine the number of illegal operations we're going to uncover is really all that expensive. I'm going to guess it would probably be just a few if I was just to give a stab at it. We've reported things to the Office of Cannabis Management in the past and really got no response or never heard from anybody. So I don't anticipate where we're going to get more help from anybody unless we do it ourselves.
Okay. Veronica?
The law came up, I mean, from the sheriff's office perspective, I mean, we can charge somebody individually for possession of it over a certain quantity, obviously, but as far as it getting to shutting down a business, that's out of our purview. So I'm guessing that's where the local law would come in handy from that aspect of it.
Okay. Veronica?
Thanks. Two questions. One, I'm sorry if you already said this when I walked in, but when we're talking about illegal cannabis sale operations, does that everything down to like your friendly neighborhood weed dealer who's been around for decades, or are we talking only at levels?
We're talking about businesses that are opened and selling cannabis illegally without a license.
Okay, which like your friendly neighborhood drug dealer is presumably also doing, potentially?
But doesn't have a brick and mortar business.
Okay.
I mean, they might, but.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I had one different question, but if you had something on that.
I was going to comment on your phraseology, but you want to, I'm troubled by friendly neighborhood. The law in New York State allows individuals to grow, I think, up to 6 plants at a time, and I don't believe there's restrictions on gifting. It is the commercial aspect that's regulated. And, you know, if there can be such a creature as a friendly neighborhood drug dealer, I'm not sure they would be the specific target, that mythical beast.
Okay. It was, yes, an intentionally jocular phrase, but I anticipate that this is likely describes a character that people might be familiar with in their own personal lives that I wouldn't know about. Other question is, I forgot it. I'm so sorry. Never mind.
If it comes back to you.
Oh, no, sorry. I remembered it. One, I think I would support a local law about this. Like, I don't see a problem in giving ourselves the authority to enforce laws that exist if no one else is doing it. In terms of the actual enforcement, Bridget, you mentioned something about illegal cannabis sales being quite low on the priority list of illegal drug sales locally, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that cannabis is not a drug in question that's linked to a lot of the violence and medical issues and health issues that it can look a lot of ways that we're seeing a lot of. So I guess, can you expand on that maybe? I'm asking because if it came to like allocating resources to enforce this, I don't know that I would support that, but I also don't have enough information in this moment right here to know what the landscape of various drug-related local enforcement is.
Sure, I think that's likely a better question directed towards the sheriff and or Matt, but the comment that was made was similar to what Matt had made earlier, in that with limited resources, the priority is currently focused on the sale of narcotics, the illegal sale of narcotics. But Matt and/or Derek, please chime in on that.
I mean, I got to say is
You're breaking up.
the utilization of marijuana. Yeah, sorry, I may be losing my internet a little bit here. I would say that, you know, marijuana utilization in Hopkins County for the charities.
Yeah, we didn't quite
I'm
get
sorry,
that.
I didn't get that.
But that's okay.
And I'm not laughing at you.
Yeah. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, we've seen a significant number of cases of the shots fired cases, people using firearms and rival narcotics dealers that are dealing meth, fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, other narcotics. That really hasn't spilled over. There has in the past been some violence related to marijuana, but it's been very low in comparison to the violence that relates to the sale of narcotics specifically. So, and that's, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, every time it's always like. Yeah, and I think Matt and Derek, and I think Bridget have done a good job of summarizing where it would rank in our, commitment to resources. I'm not quite sure what you would see as resources dedicated to this. I could never see, asking for a position or anything out of it. Maybe simply being able to post some overtime or get reimbursement through those funds to do dedicated buys or whatever we organize with the Office of Cannabis Management.
I would jump back in to say we've had a short-sighted policy in our country for a very long time where the federal government prevented research on marijuana. So there's lots of questions we don't even know. But what I have read is that the marijuana has become much stronger than it was when I was young, and that the impacts on teenagers, particularly when their brains are still developing, there seems to be some relation between marijuana use, the strong marijuana use, and psychotic breaks. I think a particular focus on enforcement of selling to youth does make sense here, but I would hope that as legalization proceeds across the country, we get a better answer on that, because there's lots of stuff we're just in the dark on, which is stupid. Yeah. All right, anything, Lee?
Yeah, there'll come a point where somebody will operate a business in one of our districts or neighborhoods or communities, and we are going to have constituents come forward and want to see those closed down, and we might as well at least have this in place so that we've got an enforcement mechanism. And then back to your point, we have no idea when these operations occur. If it is a more harmless product, it's not regulated, it could very well be contaminated with something far more serious. So anything we can do to have that capability, whether we dedicate immediate resources to it, is the second part.
Shauna?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing too, is that the pop-up stores that we're seeing, if you run a dispensary, you have to go through specific guidelines according to New York State, and part of that is packaging and keeping the product safe from children. And so if you go to a dispensary locally, you're going to get a canister that you have to push down just like a pill bottle in order to get the product out. If you go to a little head shop that does not have a license, you're getting a bag that anyone can break into. And so I would also try and appeal to the people that, think there might not be any harm there. Like, the whole idea is that we're trying to keep marijuana and cannabis out of the hands of kids. And, there are laws for a reason. And I think we need to think about the fact that if things are floating around that look like gummy bears or Cheetos or whatever, and a little kid sees it, they're going to ingest that. And so we really need to to think about, that aspect here too.
Yeah. One of the dispensaries is in my district, and I actually went in and visited it. I didn't make a purchase yet. I might, but I didn't on that occasion. But I was very impressed with the security, that there's an ante room. You go in, you have to show an ID. There's a guard there, and then you can get in, and everything's in cases, and there's people there that can answer questions and really tell you about the product. If we're going to have it, that's the way I'd love to see it marketed and sold. Yeah, Mike.
So what's our next step here? What do we do?
I think we have consensus. Sounds like we'd like to proceed with looking at what a local law would be, and
Just for your information too, I'd asked Bridget to also share the same information at Health and Human Services because of the whole health connection. So be doing that as well.
Makes sense. And along with the local law, maybe we could have some sense of cost if we were going to do enforcement, so we could compare it to what our revenues are coming out of the marijuana taxes.
I just wondered, can this information also be shared with the Board of Health? Because I think, despite the fact there's not going to be oversight by environmental health, I think they would also be interested, and the Community Services Board. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else from county administration?
That's it, thanks.
Thank you for your report. We're up to the sheriff's office.
Rich,
Oh,
Rob needs to take like a 10-second break to reboot these two monitors in the middle.
okay. We're going to go recess for 10 seconds.
So this one on this side is not working.
Okay.
So Rob can either come down and take a look at it, we can take an actual recess.
That's fine. We could just look there.
Let's use the big one. Let's keep going.
Just keep going. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So welcome to the sheriff and undersheriff. I was hoping we could start the sheriff's report with some reference to the press release that the department issued on July 10th, 2024. Jen, are you in a position to read that into the record? I would love anybody watching our meeting to hear this press release.
Before she starts, Rich, can you hear me?
I
My
can.
video doesn't work, but I just want to make sure I'm still.
Yeah, you were fading for a bit, but without your video, we seem to be able to hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just give me a minute to look for it, if Derek, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to talk about why I looked for it for a minute.
I have it here. I can read it into the record too, but if I wanted to give you guys a chance to read it, it was your great work. But let me go. This was issued on July 10th, 2024. Failure to comply, narcotics, weapons arrest. On July 10th, 2024, at 8:34 a.m., Tompkins County Sheriff's deputies and Dryden police officers observed a wanted person, Joshua F. Conklin, age 35, of Groton, New York, leaving the Dryden Hotel located at 42 West Main Street, Dryden, in a black Ford Mustang. Deputies and officers attempted to stop Conklin, but he failed to comply and fled, leading police on a several-mile pursuit into Cortland County and back into Tompkins County through the town of Dryden. While fleeing, Conklin went down Dutcher Road, currently a closed road due to road construction and paving. Conklin nearly struck a blacktop roller, a paver, and the crew operating the equipment before losing control and going off the roadway into the woods. The sheriff's office would like to commend the operator of the construction equipment for his quick thinking and vehicle maneuvering, which undoubtedly assisted in Conklin's eventual apprehension and the safety of the construction's crew. Conklin then fled on foot, leading deputies on a lengthy foot pursuit. During the foot pursuit, Conklin attempted to steal several occupied vehicles on Fall Creek Road, waiting in traffic for other road construction, one of which he jumped on top of when the operator refused to open the door. Conklin was taken into custody after being tased and transported back to the Tompkins County Sheriff's Office. Conklin's vehicle was towed from the scene and impounded at the Tompkins County Sheriff's Office pending a search warrant. While being processed at the Tompkins County Sheriff's Office, Conklin attempted to flee from custody by fleeing on foot when his restraints were being transferred so that he could use the restroom. Conklin was apprehended again by use of a taser while fleeing through the side yard of the Sheriff's Office. That afternoon, Conklin was only booked on the escape in the second-degree Class E felony and remanded to the Tompkins County Jail while the pursuit vehicle investigation continued. On July 12, 2024, the Tompkins County Sheriff's Office, the Village of Dryden Police Department, and the United States Drug Enforcement Administration executed the search warrant of Conklin's motor vehicle. During the search, an approximate aggregate weight of 16 ounces of methamphetamine, a loaded and modified 12-gauge shotgun, commonly referred to as a sawed-off shotgun, and a full-length 12-gauge shotgun and shotgun ammunition was located. In the afternoon of July 12, 2024, Conklin was booked on the additional charges. And it lists all the charges: possession of controlled substance, possession of weapons, reckless endangerment, grand larceny, criminal possession of a weapon, unlawful fleeing a police officer. Already remanded on the escape in the second-degree charge, Conklin will be arraigned on the new charges at the centralized arraignment this evening. The Tompkins County Sheriff's Office would like to thank and were assisted by the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, the New York State Police, Village of Dryden Police Department, Village of Groton Police Department, Dryden Ambulance, and the Town of Dryden Department of Public Works. And it then goes on to list all the charges he is already wanted on. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty, but that's quite an event, and I wanted to commend the Sheriff's Department for the work you did here and your deputies. Sheriff or Undersheriff, I don't know if you had any comment.
No, I'll just say, Rich, thanks for reading that out, and obviously we won't comment further beyond the press release because there hasn't been prosecution or defense yet, but that's the stuff we're starting to see more and more frequently, and obviously a very dangerous situation, and I'm very thankful for the training resources we have to provide our deputies with the best equipment, training, and they do an excellent job every day, so very proud of the work they do.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, and thanks for indulging me in reading that out. You have, you've submitted the Sheriff's Department report. Anybody have questions or comments on the report? Okay, seeing none, I see you have a resolution. Appropriation from contingent fund, replacement pay, and terminal pay reimbursement, Sheriff's Office ID 12566. If I could get a motion on that. Lee moves. Shauna seconds. Questions or comments on the resolution? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. All right, anything further for the Sheriff's Department?
Rich, I did have a couple things I wanted to mention if I
Yes, please.
Yeah, just a couple of updates beyond the report of importance. The legislature, as you know, funded the body cam program for our corrections division in this year's budget. We do have that program up and running. We're very happy to see, how it's going so far. We've had positive reviews from much of the staff. It is different for them to get used to those, but it definitely, we can see already, has an impact on behavior, both of staff and the people incarcerated in our facility. So we're looking forward to having that tool available to us and make for a much safer environment. So thank you for that. Last thing is, you, Rich, and Shauna were at our office last week. As you know, for the last 5-6 years, we've been working very, very hard to get accredited through the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. We had a 3-day accreditation process we went through with 3 different accreditors. You were present for our exit interview last week, and I'm happy to report we were recommended for accreditation. It was very successful. They had very good things to say about not only the policies themselves, but also our staff. Found everybody to be highly professional, said it was one of the smoothest assessments they've ever gone through. And for those not familiar, the accreditation program through DCGS is completely voluntary, and it's designed to improve the agency's effectiveness and efficiency and show that the 111, I believe, standards that they set out for a law enforcement agency are all met through our policies. So very proud of that, and I'd like to publicly recognize Under Sheriff Olin. She has past experience from where she came from as an accreditation manager. She was really the driving force behind all of this, and it was an immense amount of work on her. So I'm very thankful to have her, and I think this is a huge accomplishment for my office and for Tompkins County in general. I believe we're the only agency in Tompkins County that's accredited outside of Cornell University that follows a different program than we do. So this is a huge thing that's been attempted and tried for many, many years at the Sheriff's Office, and we finally did it. So we will be recognized in Albany mid-September, and anybody is welcome to come from the county if they would like to attend. And if it all goes according to plan, we should be good for another 5 years when we'll have to be reassessed.
Derek, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I had meant to raise that. Shauna, you had a comment.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was public knowledge, so I also didn't raise it. But thank you for inviting me to attend. I didn't actually realize how big this accreditation was until I was part of the meeting. And some of the things that happened, I just wrote a few notes. There were 80 observations of staff interactions. They interviewed 30 of the staff at the Sheriff's Department. They did 5 ride-alongs. They went to the communication center. Some of the highlights that the New York State, I don't know if they were judges or workers or whatever, made note of that Tompkins County was doing really well was the transparency and accountability. They said they had never seen a transparency hub as thorough as Tompkins County. They mentioned our care team, that no one in the state is doing this. They talked about the IT team, what a great job they're doing. They said that our mental health initiatives were cutting edge. They loved the fact that there's so much buy-in of the staff and the morale was so high. They actually made the statements, there's no way to improve, continue to do the work, and bring in more people to train. And then the quote that I wrote down is, this is nothing short of fabulous, so.
Yeah, it was a remarkable exit interview. As I shared with Lisa and Shauna after the meeting, I come from a business background where we depended on accreditations to operate, and you always live in fear of the audits. And getting a clean audit is a really satisfying thing, but you almost never get a perfect audit. All 3 auditors here from New York State and their experienced police officers that are now doing this, they had really nothing to say in terms of areas to improve. And in fact, they were hoping that a lot of the practices here could be shared. And in addition to Shauna's list, one of the things they really were impressed by is that police departments, to get accredited, often will buy policies. You buy them off the shelf and you use them because they're pressure tested. Tompkins County Sheriff Department wrote all of its own policies, and they said these policies were so much more effective because they were tailored specifically for policing here. But I've never attended an exit interview like this before. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to add since you were there?
No, you covered everything. I think they were very impressed by what they saw, the level of respect that staff and collaborators have for the sheriff and undersheriff and the way that they are running their operation. So I concur. It was a very unusually positive across the board exit interview.
Okay, Well, great job, and congratulations. And that'll be a nice event in September. I hope some of us can get up there to go as well. Is there anything else from the Sheriff's Department?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our District Attorney. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Rich. I will make it pretty quick. I think I'd mentioned in the past that I was looking for a replacement assistant DA position. We've had an opening since the beginning of the year and have been working with HR to advertise for that. It's become much more difficult for DA's offices across the state and country to fill their staff positions based upon the compensation for assigned counsel attorneys, and we know in New York State that being $158 an hour, we can't compete with that compensation for attorneys. And unfortunately, in August, I'm going to lose another one of my experienced assistant DAs, so I'll be down 2 attorney positions. We're supposed to have 9 attorneys on staff, including myself. We will only have 7, including myself, and this hopefully will be a short-term problem, but we haven't really had any qualified candidates apply since the beginning of the year, and so it's becoming an area of concern in terms of our ability to compete with the open market for positions and keep our department staffed.
Okay. Questions or comments for our district attorney? Well, I hope you can locate some good candidates.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, moving on, we've got the Department of Emergency Response. I see Michael's with us, and people are moving around on the screen there. Is this Danielle?
Danielle's with us, and Jessica as well.
Okay, Jessica, there you are. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. So the only thing I was going to mention that's not really necessarily in the report is the status of the backup center project. So we've made considerable progress since our last meeting. Our phone system has now been installed. Our radio system has been installed. We have folks there today adding monitors to the workstations, and we're hoping to be testing within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. And my recollection is once you get that operational, you're going to operate from there while you do some improvements to your current location.
That's correct. So we're hoping to start the renovations in our current space on or around October the 1st. So we're hoping that if we can start testing in the next couple of weeks, that we'll be able to really use September as a full test month where we can maybe split some staff, have some staff there, have some staff here, just in the event that when we're ready to transition, if we have any setbacks, that we'll be able to immediately address them.
Okay. Any questions on that subject? Any questions on the report from Dewar? I did have one item just for future months. It looks like the siren participation numbers are good. And I know I've asked in the past what kind of percentage we might expect for participation in a county our size. Would it be possible to get those numbers trended from the last, I think Siren's been going 2 years now, correct?
Correct.
And we were using, now I'm trying to remember the system we had before Siren.
Swift 911.
Okay. If we could just see a trend line. It looks like it's going up, but I'd just like to confirm that. But that's for future months.
I'm not sure how likely we are going to be able to get Swift 911 data. It's certainly, we can try. Swift was bought out by Rave, who was subsequently bought out by Motorola, so I'm not quite sure whether they've kept that data and rolled it over or not, but
Yeah, I don't want to give you a homework project that's too much, so don't worry about it. But it would be interesting to see the trend line. It seems like we're doing something really good with Siren. So.
And we just did some PSAs last week on Siren. We're trying to do something different every few months just to sort of, keep it fresh. We had some, we did do some advertising on TCAT in the beginning of the year. And what we're looking to do is every year just sort of change up our method of communicating with the community so that it remains fresh and it's not just the same thing. But we just did some recent radio spots as well.
Okay. Are those planned for around September when we get our influx of students?
Yes, and also because September is our National Emergency Preparedness Month.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything further for Department of Emergency Response? All right. All right. Seeing none, we will keep moving. Next up is Department of Probation and Community Justice, and I see Dan Cornell is with us today, and Carla is on screen. Come on up, Dan.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't we just see if there's any questions on the jail booking monthly snapshot and the enhanced sentencing and supervision options. Everybody have a chance to look at those? It looks like trends are continuing.
Yes. I would agree. Everything seems to be pretty stable, not a lot of fluctuation. Numbers continue to trend down versus many years ago, but are fairly stable since bail reform.
Okay. All right. Well, I think your big item is you have a presentation you'd like to make to us.
Yes, if you think we have time.
We do.
Thank you. I don't know if the presentation will be brought up on the.
I can.
Thank you. So, presentation is in response to our gun-involved violence elimination engagement and the resulting officer safety considerations. I'm requesting consideration from the Public Safety Committee to consider approving a resolution allowing me to arm 7 officers in my department who are affiliated with the GIV detail. I want to preface this by saying it's not a knee-jerk reaction to any single event, rather the result of a progression of circumstances that I've seen over the last 4 years of being director. Second slide is just our mission statement. This has been our mission statement for at least a decade. I point out that while basically probation is known for its rehabilitative role, we also have a very significant role and responsibility to public safety, which is even more clearly defined by our participation in the GIV detail. Our guiding principles also involve community protection and public safety as a priority. Again, GIV is very much oriented towards enhancing public safety. I don't want to move through the slides too quickly if people have questions, but I think you've had time to review. Our beliefs about our staff and department. Believe our employees shall strive for professional excellence for themselves in the department. We believe our employees shall perform their duties with honesty, integrity, and professionalism that is free from any form of bias or discrimination. We believe that our employees shall embrace and strive to understand issues of cultural diversity amongst our clients and staff. We believe that our staff shall be an agent and motivator for change by using best practices in the field of probation. Now, during my tenure, I focused a lot of time and energy on staff safety enhancements. October of 2020, working in conjunction with the Department of Emergency Response, Mr. Steitley was able to get us radios, which for the first time ever, we had real-time communication with dispatch instead of what we were doing previously, basically, officers in the field were texting their supervisors, "I'm here, I'm gone, I'm here, I'm gone," at each home visit that they attended to. I think it's really enhanced our safety in that regard. In 2023, we also got our first probation department vehicle to be used for home contacts, where previously there was no option other than to drive our own personal vehicles, which can be considered a safety risk because people that we're supervising and others in the community now know what our vehicles look like. If your vehicle's distinctive, they're eventually going to find out where you live, and that can cause problems. So probation officers as peace officers. Probation officers have always been defined as peace officers under the criminal procedure law, section 210, subdivision 24. Our work is guided by New York State Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives, General Rules and Regulations, Title IX. And when Title IX is adopted by the state legislature, it has the full force and effect of law. Probation officers have a unique authority over a specific population of people that are ordered to be supervised by and for the courts. Our role is specific to those individuals that we supervise. We're not police officers. We're not trying to become police officers. However, we do face a lot of the same risks that a police officer may face when working out in the field.
Yeah, Dan, could we just go back one slide?
Sure.
Just for the benefit of committee members who may not be familiar with this because it's confusing, New York State has different categories. There's a police officer that will carry a weapon. A peace officer may carry a weapon. And there's certain classes of peace officers that are not allowed to carry weapons. Probation officers are in the category that may.
That is correct. Criminal procedure law 210 defines persons designated as peace officers. Subdivision 24 of that, I believe it is, states simply that probation officers are to be considered peace officers, as opposed to other designated peace officer titles, harbor masters. The list goes on and on. I believe there's over 100 positions. A lot of them delineate that the peace officer status for a harbor master does not necessarily permit that individual to carry a firearm while on duty. There's no such description attached to peace officers, parole officers, or other probation officers.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that up. As you'll recall, March of 2023, Tompkins County was approached along with 3 other counties by New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services as being identified as 4 counties that they wanted to add to the GIVE program. It was year 10, so it was called GiveX grant. When that involved the district attorney's office, the sheriff's department, Ithaca City Police Department, and probation. So we all signed on, became a GIVE county in July 1st of 2023. The GIVE requirements for a probation listed out a lot of specifics of how probation must supervise offenders under our supervision who were involved with firearms or other deadly weapons as part of their conviction. Those included a minimum of 1 year of supervision at the greatest risk supervision level, where we're seeing the individual at least twice a week, as well as doing more field work, visiting that individual at their home or out in the community. A minimum of 6 months of GPS electronic monitoring, of course, a prohibition for the possession of firearms and other weapons, as well as search conditions permitting warrantless searches for probation compliance. So we've engaged in a lot of searches as a result of our supervision of our GIVE offenders. When possible, given timing and circumstances, we have sought and obtained search orders as defined by section 41050 sub 3 of the criminal procedure law, which we do in an effort to be extremely transparent with the judges for whom we're supervising these individuals. A search order basically is something in addition to the existing search conditions. So we're saying to the court, we have reason to believe this individual has violated their probation conditions by possessing certain items. These are the items we would like your permission or order to search for. We obtain the order from the court, and then we proceed with the search order in conjunction with our police give partners who the law allows us to ask for assistance when conducting a search. So the GIVE collaboration and impacts, some things that have not been talked about in here. The GIVE grant requires regular meetings and communication between police agencies where there's a lot of information sharing that prior to signing on to GIVE, probation would not necessarily be privy to. So we're learning a lot about people who are in the community, people that we supervise, people that they are affiliated with that we might not otherwise become privy to. Oftentimes, we're also getting real-time intelligence from police partners who obviously operate 24/7. And some of the time that results in us coming out after hours, after our normal business hours, working nights, weekends, in order to conduct field work as well as potentially conduct searches if the circumstances permit. We can legally address public safety concerns when reasonable suspicion of a violation of probation exists, which is different from the standard that a police officer must have probable cause to make an arrest. That's because someone on probation who's been sentenced and given probation conditions is seen as having a reduced expectation of privacy. So oftentimes, probation will have to take the lead based on the circumstances of an event where police have done what they can do and now are reliant upon passing information to probation and letting probation take it from there. We have a responsibility to act in the interest of overall community safety as well by removing deadly weapons from probation clients who illegally possess them despite being prohibited from doing so. The GIVE detail took 23 illegally possessed firearms off the streets of Tompkins County from July 1st, 2023 until June 30th of 2024. A lot of the credit for that goes to the police agencies, but probation did remove 3 firearms, and I'll speak more to that a little later in the presentation. Community perception and impact is a big part of this request. Obviously, we're aware that the decision to arm probation officers involved with the GIVE program may change how some members of the community view us. I think through our use of procedural justice over the years, the community knows what the probation department in Tompkins County is about and what the probation department in Tompkins County is not about. We remain committed to being compassionate, fair, and giving equitable treatment to all the probation clients that we support, that we serve. We're aware the decision to arm probation officers on the GIVE detail may be perceived as contrary to the goals of reimagining public safety in Tompkins County. And again, I would say our goal and the goal of reimagining public safety is to enhance public safety by providing rehabilitative assistance as well as enforcement of probation conditions. I just add that many people seem to have a pessimistic view that probation and the justice system are just out to get people, out to catch people doing the wrong thing. I disagree with that, having been in this field my entire adult life. My perception is that we try to do things for people, and that taking firearms away from people who should not have them and thereby enhancing community safety is something that we're doing for the community, and the individuals who may get consequences for not following their probation conditions by possessing firearms have made decisions contrary to what we were hoping they would make. We treat people with neutrality, respect. I believe that we're trustworthy, and we try to give all of our clients a voice. Part of our procedural justice enhancements through GIVE was to anonymize our screening process for clients. We take out any demographic information, names, anything that you could identify the person with, and focus solely on the circumstances of the crime for which they were arrested for and their criminal history. And that way decisions are not skewed because you know the last name of an individual or you've previously supervised an individual. Anything that would identify that person is taken out of the equation, and we're just focusing on what the person did. I think that's enhanced our fairness in the response that we're able to provide to the people that we supervise without any implicit bias. So state law and local policy, New York State Probation Correctional Alternatives, General Rules and Regulations I referred to before, Title IX, state that no probation officer shall use, carry, or have a firearm in his or her possession while on duty unless specifically authorized in writing by the Director of Probation. Our current Tompkins County Probation Department policies and procedures do not allow for that. And I'm seeking to change that for specific assignments of probation officers, specifically those affiliated with the GIVE detail. Penal Law Section 265, sub 17, there's a lot of defendants convicted of felonies and specific misdemeanors that cannot possess firearms in New York State. If they're put on probation for that, they have a probation condition prohibiting them from possessing. So we've dealt with this for a long time, but bail reform and GIVE have changed things a little bit as far as potential for consequences for people who do not follow their orders and conditions. Bail reform has significantly restricted categories of charges for which a person accused of a crime can be incarcerated prior to conviction or pretrial. Many of these individuals are placed on pretrial supervision. This is not exclusively a Tompkins County issue. In fact, none of what I'm addressing today is. It's being echoed by probation directors across the state. People on probation supervision who are accused of a new crime are often released to the community while their new charges are pending. This can and often does include new charges for significant crimes of violence and/or possession of weapons that are not bail-eligible offenses. However, a violation of probation petition alleging commission of a new crime while under supervision can be filed. They're difficult to resolve if they're based on arrest for a new crime, and they may wait in court until the case can be heard. However, a violation of probation does allow for remanding an offender in the interest of community safety, and it's often the only mechanism available to the courts to ensure community safety for a person on probation supervision while their new charges are pending. This is just a snapshot of the COMPAS evidence-based validated risk assessment instrument that we use to as part of our determination for recommendations and probation. The top three refer to someone's risk of violence or violent recidivism, general recidivism, and failure to appear. We weigh those very heavily because if you score high in at least two of those three areas, we're going to recommend greatest risk supervision as part of our practice, and that's recommended best practice statewide. The lower sections are more focused on needs with the green bar, which allow us to determine what kind of programming a person might benefit from in order to help them rehabilitate themselves. Looking at caseload trends, we're seeing much higher levels of opiate, methamphetamine, and cocaine use, along with drugs tainted with fentanyl and other drugs that can be highly dangerous and potentially deadly. I know that was discussed earlier in a conversation regarding marijuana. It's being seen in other areas. Apparent link between narcotics trafficking and firearms possession. As part of the GIVE information that we receive, there is a clear nexus to narcotics trafficking and gun possession. So a lot of the individuals that we're supervising have both issues that need to be addressed. More serious offenses with higher levels of violence, violent offenders being placed on interim probation supervision without the benefit of a pre-plea or pre-sentence investigation. That's not happening as much here, but we're not solely subject to supervising individuals who are arrested and sentenced in Tompkins County. We're tasked with supervising anyone who lives in Tompkins County. So if they're arrested and sentenced in another county or placed on interim probation supervision in another county, they're transferred here, and as long as we verify that they actually reside here, we must supervise them. Split sentences, however, are not often utilized, even when recommended by probation. I'll get to the graph on the right in a moment. And we're seeing a lot fewer numbers of cases for low-level crimes. So you can see on the graph, in 2019, roughly 46% of the people we recommended a split sentence for received a split sentence. In 2020, it was up to 54%, 2021, 36%. 2022 down to 30%, and 2023 back up to 50%. So when we're doing an assessment and making a professional recommendation for what an individual should be sentenced to, that's all it is a recommendation. The courts still have the ability to sentence the individual to whatever they think is necessary and appropriate.
Sorry, can you remind me what a split sentence is?
Yes, a split sentence is an individual starting their sentence on local incarceration, and then as soon as they're released, they would begin their probation supervision. So it could be 30 days in jail and 3 years probation, could be 6 months in jail and 4.5 years left on a 5-year term of probation supervision, or anything less than those. So again, the next slide with caseload trends involves probation recommending incarceration as the sentence. And then the percentage of times that people are actually sentenced to incarceration as their sentence versus something else ranges between 50 and 70% roughly. So we're getting a lot of individuals sentenced to probation that our risk assessment instrument and our professional assessment is telling us this individual is not a good candidate for probation. The community would be safer if that individual was incarcerated, and we get them on probation anyway. Sometimes those individuals are upset with us for recommending jail, which makes it difficult to build a rapport with those individuals when we first start out. Eventually they see that regardless, we are there to try to help them, and we're usually able to move forward in a productive way. Caseload trends again, the number of greatest risk supervision cases has trended higher in conjunction with weapons-related charges in the GIVE initiative, which began in July of 2023. So we're in 2020, 21, and 22, we're averaging about 40 greatest risk supervision cases. We're now averaging 2023 and 24 closer to 55 for those 2 years. We currently supervise 14 individuals on GIVE and have at least 24 more who are pre-GIVE but are on supervision for criminal possession of a weapon or other violent offense that involve the use of or possession of a weapon. The next chart shows probation cases with weapons-related charges, and caveat, this is investigations and supervision, so some of these numbers may be counted twice, but we've seen essentially a tripling of weapons-related cases from 2020 to 2023, from a low of 63 to a current high of 162. We do a lot of field work in probation. This is not specific just to GIVE, but this just to show you how often we are out in the field doing our work. Almost 5,000 home contacts and field visits over the course of 2020 to 2023. Generally, these are not with law enforcement. I would say a very, very minuscule percentage. We might have law enforcement accompany us, but these are generally just probation officers going out alone or preferably in pairs to meet with people that they supervise. I have some numbers from Department of Emergency Response. So the number of shots fired incidents in the city of Ithaca, these are individual calls into the computer-aided dispatch, was 89 reports of shots fired in 2021, 61 individual reports of shots fired in 2022, and 84 reports of shots fired in 2023. There were also 13 stabbings in 21, 12 stabbings in 22, and 13 in 2023. I have other numbers as a result of GIVE that I think also speak to this that are not on the slide. Per IPD's GIVE records, there were 19 shootings in the city of Ithaca between 2021 and April of 2023, of which there were 25 victims. Only 3 of those crimes have resulted in an arrest. These cases are very hard to resolve. Some of those offenders may have been people under our supervision or people that we've previously supervised, but there's no way to know. What I do know is that every single one of the 5 victims who died over that, or the 3 victims who died and the 2 who were paralyzed, were people that were known to the probation department. All individuals that we had a fairly close connection with and sensed the real tragedy of the loss of those individuals' lives, as well as their loss of functioning for the paralyzed individuals, both of whom seemed to be really turning a corner in their behavior when they were injured. Current safety concerns for GIVE officers. We're supervising clients with documented histories of firearm and weapon possession. Many of those individuals are not motivated to discontinue the behaviors we're finding. We're seeing a lot of surveillance tools in use by clients and technology advantages that they have that put us at a tactical disadvantage when we're going to do home contacts as well as searches. I was in a home recently to do a search that had 8 surveillance cameras on the outside of it. The individual knew we were coming before we knew we were there. They also text, call, tell their friends something's going on. People will show up. People will try to distract. We don't know or have any control over who those individuals are until we're able to take away the communications from those individuals that are making the calls. We've engaged clients during roadside stops, conducted residential searches, and those are almost always tense and dynamic situations, as I refer to people being called and people showing up unexpected to aid or observe on behalf of the person that we're there to search. Clients also have access to real-time law enforcement communications because they're monitoring dispatch, they're monitoring radio traffic. They are using that to their advantage to dispose of items, know what our movements are. And I think that also is a detriment to our safety. We're also seeing the frequent presence of unknown associates, vehicles, and individuals that are involved from out of state, out of county, that are affiliated with the individuals that we're supervising. We know nothing about them. They know nothing about us. A lot of times, I believe, assumptions are made from people who are outside of Tompkins County or outside of the state that if probation's showing up, they're armed and they're potentially going to arrest us, because that's what happens a lot of times in other counties and other states where probation and parole officers are armed. I think that potentially heightens the risks that we're facing when we're dealing with individuals who are not from here. Also, I mentioned being tactically disadvantaged, even when accompanied by the police. The search remains the responsibility of the probation department if it's a probation search order, and we're simply relying on our police partners to secure the scene. If there's enough manpower, we may also ask officers to aid us in conducting the search, which we're legally permitted to do. So my proposal to arm GIV officers would involve training and arming of myself as the director, the deputy director, Carla Brackett, who's online with us today, a probation supervisor with 17 years experience, and 4 senior probation officers with 10, 13, 18, and 19 years of experience respectively. These individuals I selected very intentionally for the GIV detail based upon their training, their experience, their qualifications, and their de-escalation capabilities that are proven over the time that they've been employed with Tompkins County. These are not inexperienced staff. I'm not talking about arming a 21-year-old kid fresh out of the academy, which no one seems to question when it's a police officer. We would have to go through the exact same training as a police officer in order to become qualified to carry a firearm on duty. That's prescribed by criminal procedure law. The training requirements for armed officers, it's defined in Article 230 of the CPL. We would only be carrying firearms while we were conducting field work. I'm thankful to the county for providing us with armed security officers at our building. Weapons and firearms, knives are no longer getting into our building, so I don't feel the need to introduce a firearm into an interaction with a client where there is no reasonable cause to believe that the client is armed themselves. So we would lock our firearms up when we were conducting office work, and that would require the purchase of a safe to lock those firearms up in. Just looking at unarmed versus armed probation departments, New York State, there's 62 counties, 5 of those comprise New York City. 45 out of 62 probation departments in New York State presently have some contingent of armed probation officers. As you can see, that's 72.5%. Probation Area 2 of New York State is comprised of 18 counties, basically through a swath from the Pennsylvania border up to the Canadian border in the center of the state. Tompkins County is in that area. 11 of those counties presently have some contingent of armed officers, or 61%. For COPA Area 2, COPA means Council of Probation Administrators. The armed counties are listed. The unarmed counties are also listed on the right. Broome and Tioga are listed in orange because they're both currently making similar requests to their legislatures as I'm making to you folks. Broome is a GIV county, Tioga County is not, but they're both experiencing what they perceive to be increased safety risks in the field. Next is just a map to give you another view. The counties in blue are currently have some contingent of armed probation officers. Yellow are counties that are requesting to become armed. Broome and I believe it's Rockland are both GIV counties who are requesting to become armed. And the white counties are counties who are currently not armed. I left Chemung County orange because they are the only remaining GIV county in New York State who's not seeking to be armed at this time. So with GIV, there's 21 counties who are involved in the GIV grant. 17 of those counties presently have armed officers, or 80%. Broome, Chemung, Rockland, and Tompkins are the remaining 4. If Broome County and Rockland County are approved to become armed, then 90% of GIV counties will be armed. Obviously, if Tompkins County is added to that, it would be 95% of GIV counties that would be armed. I want to show you an example in the next slide of give search order we requested. This client was on probation for felony criminal possession of a loaded firearm. We were given reason to believe that he was in possession of another firearm. We obtained a search order from the court, searched his residence, and found the weapon that is pictured, which is a Springfield AR-15. It was loaded with 28 rounds of rifle ammunition, capable of piercing our body armor. He also possessed 2 additional high-capacity magazines that are illegal to possess in New York State, a 30-round magazine and a 45-round magazine. I'll add that there was a round in the chamber and the safety was off. This weapon is reportedly the same make and model as the firearm that was used to ambush a Syracuse City police officer and an Onondaga County Sheriff's deputy 2 weeks prior to our search. Both of those officers and the offender lost their lives in a 9-second firefight. Another search order a week later was conducted on a client who was on probation for a Class B misdemeanor, a very low-level offense. We had been provided with information that she was in possession of 2 firearms that she was trying to sell on the street. We conducted the search based upon a search order. Upon entering the residence, her boyfriend had one of the pistols loaded in his pocket, and the other one was found hidden in a closet. Both of those were secured and taken from the illegal drug market, the illegal gun market, rather. Next slide is just other ancillary weapons that were taken from that same individual that were prohibited from her possession. Note with the ruler in the middle, the blades on a few of those knives are 6-7 inches long and have points designed to pierce body armor and other levels of protection. So, should you approve the request, or should the legislature approve a request arming officers? I have some associated costs. These, of course, are estimates, but they're reliable estimates. We cannot use GIV grant funds to purchase firearms. Our current grant allocation for the GIV cycle has allowed us to move some money that was previously allocated for staff compensation out of our original budget, and I think that would almost completely cover the amount of money that it would cost to do psychological assessments on 7 officers, put them through the Municipal Police Training Council firearms training, as well as cover travel expenses and other ancillary equipment. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan. One item you and I had spoken about earlier, maybe you'd comment on our parole officers. My understanding is parole officers throughout the state are armed and are doing very similar work to what probation officers do.
Yes, they're definitely all armed. Obviously, they're overseen by a state agency where we have state oversight but are answerable to a county. But there are a lot of other peace officer titles where individuals are carrying items for self-defense, including, interestingly enough, our animal control officer that we needed to call in for one of our searches to take a couple aggressive pit bulls into his custody, was better armed than any of the probation officers entering the building to conduct the search.
Okay. Yeah. And just to be clear, there is no resolution before us today. This is just for discussion. But I think let's open it up and questions. Shauna.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand on this. I know you mentioned your employees driving their own cars, and I do have concern about that. And I think you're right about them, if there's a way that I don't know if we could purchase county cars for them to drive. I know that we do that for some of our staff at Whole Health and some of our other agencies. You know, I know that we're on a tight budget, but you know, I think it's our responsibility to provide that. I guess my question is, what are the new duties under the GIVE grant that your officers will have that put them at more danger than they previously had?
Well, they're supervising offenders who are known to have violent histories and known to have possessed firearms or other deadly weapons. That's why they're on probation. They have conditions prohibiting them from continuing to possess firearms or other dangerous instruments, and some choose to continue to do so. Of course, people are looking at high stakes. If they're on probation for a felony and they're caught doing the wrong thing, they're potentially looking at going to prison. When I taught de-escalation, some of the things that really seem to trigger people towards violence are depriving them of their freedom, depriving them of their finances, depriving them of access to their children, depriving them of their property. Tends to be hard things to de-escalate people from, and we're checking many of those boxes when we're going into the residence of an offender who may have narcotics, may have firearms, may have other things that are evidence of violations of probation, and we're there to deprive them of those things in the interests of community safety.
I think the part that I'm having a really hard time with is that in Tompkins, we're trying to do things different, and we're trying to change the narrative. And there are things that we've done that have been very successful, and things that we have done that have failed miserably. And we talk about safety at our human services building. We've added metal detectors. We've added security. Like, those are some things that 7 years ago I would have sworn I never wanted to do. And we're at a different place, and I realize that. And I know that your job is to provide a safe place for people that are going into that building. The concern that I continue to have is for people that are trying to get benefits, they're walking into DSS. If I were in there with my child, and I have been in there with my child, I had to do a second parent adoption through probation. It could have been really scary for my kid to have seen guns.
May I speak to that?
Yeah.
It's not our intention to have firearms on our sides when we're working in the office.
Right.
It's specifically for field work.
Okay.
Where clearly at the Human Services building, we have not only a responsibility to make it a safe environment for people who are coming there to receive services, we also have a responsibility to make it safe for staff.
Right.
I don't have staff going out into the field with police officers on a regular basis. Sometimes when we're working GIVE details, we have the benefit of having an armed officer with us. However, in a dynamic situation where we're conducting a search room to room inside of a home, and there's 2 officers there providing security, we're the ones knocking on the door, we're the ones opening the closet, we're the ones inside, unarmed, unable to defend ourselves in the event that we were faced with a deadly threat. To me, that's much more substantial risk to people's safety than almost anything else.
I think, in making this decision, and this is a very big decision for me, I think it would be helpful to hear from Mona. We've done all this work over the past 3-4 years. We've had community conversations, and even invite the Vera Institute in to see what maybe some of their feedback would be. Because I would hate to kind of undo some of the community work that we've done by making one decision.
All right, Lee?
I don't know where to start. Sean kind of touched on a few things here, but it's cumulative, it's evolving, it's getting worse. And just the fact that we've had to place security in county facilities where we never would have done that even 5 years ago. The fact that we've got micnometers at social services. The fact that we've had shootings and people shot in front of our county buildings. It tells you the environment that's out there. You read a press release at the beginning of the meeting. That's a constituent of mine. Somebody I've known since he was an infant. I about fell out of my chair when the part about the gun guns in the vehicle. These are people we transport in our ambulances and send our people like me out in the middle of the night without law enforcement backup. This is all about safety, and you've got people deployed that are out there to remove guns, and we don't want to arm them with guns to be able to protect themselves. This is a no-brainer.
Mike or Veronica? Veronica.
Yeah, I have a few questions. I think I also don't know where I stand on this and want to learn more, though I do thank you, Dan, for such a transparent and comprehensive and thoughtful presentation. I mean, I guess you and your staff collectively. I also do think we should question arming a kid fresh out of any academy. Like you said, we don't, which is true, the same way that we're questioning this. One, I guess Shauna kind of touched on this, but the safety concerns on the slide, I guess my question is, are those new to recent years, or I can imagine both the tech related things being new, but the bit about probation clients, spending time with people you don't know, is that new, or is that just people hang out with people?
No, that's clearly not new, but we're now learning a lot more about who those individuals are based upon our communications with law enforcement. Knowledge is a very important thing to have when you're dealing with somebody who may have an extensive criminal record in another state, and you would have no way of knowing that. Somebody who's on probation or parole from another state or another county, people who have warrants, things of that nature that, we're just previously bumbling into, not having any mechanism of finding out who those individuals are, or, what their, what risk they may pose to us.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I hear you saying that whether you can find information about someone or not, your actual relationship with the individuals is important to the types of interactions you'd have.
Absolutely. I mean, with us, rapport is everything. Sometimes rapport is genuinely received by another individual, and sometimes they're playing the game of, trying to appear compliant, trying to appear interested while continuing to do the things they were doing prior to being sentenced to probation. I think that speaks to those individuals' level of commitment to change far more than it speaks to the change I'm asking for. We're dealing with people with a proven propensity for violence who are illegally possessing firearms. And I'm being asked to ask my staff to go out and take those firearms away from those individuals with no way to defend themselves. They're essentially sitting ducks. If an offender or an associate of an offender wanted to kill one of us, we have nothing but our sneakers to prevent that from happening. I think it speaks to the county's stated goals recently. Our Tompkins County values, our mission, our vision, strategic priorities, reference safety, many, many times reference community safety. I think the request is in line with Tompkins County's mission, vision, and values, as well as their strategic priorities. You can't ask for safety and promote safety without providing your employees with what they need to give you that safety. Because my people are being asked to do very dangerous things, and they're doing it more and more reluctantly because they're starting to realize eventually something bad is going to happen. I won't ask my people to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself, especially when it comes to safety risk. I was actually contacted by the state director and told that I needed to discontinue doing home contacts with my staff. And I asked him if that was If he was giving me a directive or a suggestion, he said it was a suggestion, so I continue to go with my people because I'm not going to ask them to endanger their lives while I sit at home watching television. That's what we're being asked to do.
Mike?
I was just going to say, I'm not going to say it any better than Dan just said it. I mean, it's, we're asking people to go into dangerous situations. And listen, I'm doing a lot of door-to-door lately, and I'm just going to houses to ask for votes. And there's some rough areas, man. And now you're not just sending people into an unknown. You're sending people into a known area that you're expecting some violence, and that doesn't mean that you go in there guns blazing. That means you have something to protect yourself with, and the person you're going to visit knows that. And I think that actually takes the temperature down, doesn't increase the temperature. I would have a tough time, as you just stated, sending anybody into a situation like that with zero protection. I mean, how do you, unless we're saying we're going to start sending deputies on every one of these calls, and I don't think that's practical. So I have a lot of faith in your staff. Clearly, people
appreciate that.
That are, well, seriously, people that will go into that situation unarmed. That's a lot to ask for somebody, and clearly they do it in a professional manner, and I expect that professionalism to continue whether they're, even if they're armed. I don't expect them to not have that. Somehow they're going to lose that professionalism by being armed. I don't expect that. So
I don't see that with other law enforcement providers. Honestly, I feel the individuals that have been selected for this detail, they were actually, I asked 3 additional individuals who I considered to have the proper qualifications and to volunteer for this, because I'm not going to mandate somebody to do something along these lines that they're not comfortable with. 3 people actually opted out and said, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm not seeking to arm the entire department. There are certainly members of my department who would choose not to be armed, probably would leave if I mandated them to. It's a very specific group of individuals who've been tasked with very specific tasks that are new to what we do since GIV. I think we're crossing the threshold between courageous and skilled to foolish to continue to do these things we're doing without an ability to defend ourselves if necessary. Obviously, my worst nightmare is one of my staff to be injured or killed. My second worst nightmare would be for one of my staff to injure or kill somebody. However, we're not in control of other people's choices, and some people make bad choices that have ramifications for us, who are not only my employees, but quite honestly, they're all of your employees.
Okay. I'll take a turn, I guess. I agree with everybody who said this is really an unfortunate moment in our society where we've gotten to this point. But it seems like this proposal is measured, it's limited, it's commensurate to the risk that these employees are looking at. And I just say that they are dealing with people who have demonstrated in the past really poor judgment in one way or another. And those are the people we're depending on to act rationally in these interactions. I think having a limited number of probation officers who have many years of experience as probation officers for these limited circumstances is a reasonable approach. But I think Shauna's suggestion that we hear from Mona Lita might be a good one. Let's get the perspective on it. I look to the other committee members. Would that be useful? Mike?
I think it'd be useful, but I don't think, I don't see any reason kind of to pause the movement forward, just because this is something, even if, however it's voted out of this committee, the rest of the legislature is going to want to speak out on it.
I imagine this will be a difficult issue for the whole legislature to really think about and vote on. But maybe we could consider a resolution at our next meeting and invite Mona and proceed on that basis. Does that make sense? All right. Veronica?
Thanks. I had a couple more questions, I guess.
Please.
One, I don't know what order to go in. One of them, would it be at all reasonable to ask, I can see why it might not be reasonable to hear, I'm so sorry, let me say them in the other order. One of my questions was going to be if the officers you were proposing to arm wanted to be armed, and I guess you kind of answered that already by saying that some declined.
Well, I can say that none of us want to be armed. I mean, I wouldn't work in this probation department for 30 years, 25 years here, 30 years in the field, unarmed, if my goal in life was to become armed. We're not wanting to be armed. We're in situations where my professional assessment is that we need to be armed in order to be able to safely do what we do.
Yeah, I guess, thank you. I didn't mean, I don't hear like a.
I just want to be clear, and I know that wasn't your intention, but it is a point that I actually had jotted down and not said. I took this job in 2020. One of the interview questions I remember very distinctly is, what is your position on arming the probation department? At that time, my answer was, I don't feel that it's necessary. Things have changed. Bail reform changed things. Being part of the GIVE grant changed things. COVID pandemic changed things. The drug supply that we're currently dealing with changed things. The mental health situation in this country has changed things. We are not in November of 2019 or 2019 interviewing for this position. It's been a progression. May 27th, 2022 was a life-changing event for me as I sat in my office hearing gunshots ring out in the parking lot, watching an individual walk 50 feet past my office with a handgun in his hand. Fortunately, he didn't decide to come into the building. That was the impetus behind getting armed officers at the Human Services Building. There have been many, many, many individuals shot at or shot within 2 blocks of our building since then. Many in broad daylight. While we wish that wasn't happening in Ithaca and Tompkins County, it is happening. If you Google shots fired Ithaca, you can spend 2 or 3 hours reading articles from the last couple of years. It's very dangerous. We're very fortunate that there has not been a child playing on the sidewalk who is shot and killed by a bullet, someone pushing their stroller down the street, some innocent civilian who just happens to be in the way when people decide to open up and start shooting. There was a shooting on June 28th at West Village. 5 minutes before the shooting occurred, there was a dozen kids playing in the parking lot. School's out, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, beautiful sunny day. There are dangerous things happening, and the people who are engaging in those behaviors do not seem to care who gets hurt.
Well, oh, sorry. Thank you for sharing that.
No, absolutely.
I regret my choice of word for want. I know that's not, you're not picking on it, but I think a better thing would have been like,
I'm not
do the other
trying to be
folks.
petty about wording.
I understand.
I have it written down here. None of us want to be armed.
Right.
If I wanted to be armed, I would have left Tompkins County a long time ago and got a job somewhere else.
The better question would have been like, do others agree with you in the assessment that this is the right choice for the moment and the context and the job that we are asking them to do?
I think some are far more. Anyone that I'm asking to arm, I've had a conversation with, and they've agreed that they feel that it's necessary. I've had conversations with other people in the department who I'm not considering arming, what their thoughts are. And I've gotten a variety of responses from, I see why it's important based on what my colleagues are doing, that they may need to be armed to continue to do what they're doing. I've had other officers say, I have no interest in being armed. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. I mean, clearly, it's a big step and it's a big ask, and it's, to my knowledge, never been asked for before in this county. And we do pride ourselves on being different and trying to be better and being compassionate. But you can't be compassionate with someone who's shooting at you and have them stop shooting. The time for compassion has passed.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I say one more thing?
You bet. We're just running out of time, so.
Oh, right. I also, of course, agree it's paramount that your employees, who are our employees, like, can stay safe in the job that they do as much as humanly possible. What the question that comes up for me, and I think, I don't know, like, in general, around guns and arming people is the question of, like, does that make the situation safer? And I'm here, I know that, like, I personally would have to participate in this decision, don't know what, like, obviously you and your officers have plenty of other tools to manage the kind of situations you encounter. I have not done a lick of, like, probation officer training, so I don't know what this is like. But that's the question that comes up. That's why I appreciate, like, I don't know, you sharing a little more of your process going behind this. I'd appreciate, like, hearing from Mona. I'm curious, would it be possible or not wild to hear from former probation clients what they think about this? If there's any, if this is, like, not current supervisees, but anyone who's been on that side of the equation.
We've been doing exit interviews with our people for a couple of years. Obviously, they're voluntary because people are off probation. I would welcome any of you speaking with any of your constituents or anyone else who's ever been supervised by the Tompkins County Probation Department and ask if they've been treated fairly, ask if they've been treated well. I would be surprised if you could find very many people who did not feel that they were treated that way.
Okay. Let's plan on picking up this conversation next month. Lisa, I did have one question. Would this do anything to our insurance program?
I had asked that question early on, and the answer that I received was no.
Okay. All right, well, Dan, thank you. This is difficult.
I appreciate and respect all of your perspectives. I thank you for listening and considering, and if there are any questions that come up for any of you in the, between now and the time a decision is made, I would be happy to speak with you. So thank you.
Okay. All right. And then anything further for Department of Probation, Community Justice? Okay. Assigned counsel program. Is Lance with us?
Lance is on vacation.
Oh, good for Lance. I was pushing because I wanted to make sure we had some time. Okay. I don't believe we have any other business before the committee. Is there anything from the members? No? All right. Well, thank you for coming. I would consider a motion to adjourn. John moves, Mike seconds, all in favor. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.